Join me in welcoming Shane Benson as he shares with us about welcome and hospitality.
Well, I can honestly say I don't think I've ever done a workshop in a church like this with the pews and everything. So I may ask you to stand up, get engaged, have some conversations. You may have to turn around, actually talk to some folks, outside of, just kind of turning around and such. But we'll make the best use of this space that we possibly can. I want to give you a little bit of context on my journey through Chick-fil-A, just so you have a little bit more context, more than I could have given this morning. But I think we mentioned this morning, I started with Chick-fil-A when I was 16 years old. I needed a job. I had a girlfriend who loved to eat, and I had no money. I ended up marrying that young lady that loved to eat, and she was my high school sweetheart. Her name is Gina, and I fell in love with the brand. I really did. I mean, from the very start, the thing that I loved most about this brand was the fact that I worked for the guy that owned the business. And what was really unique about that was I felt like my dad, who honestly, I idolized my dad. He could fix anything. He just so servant-minded. But my dad had zero competitive spirit. I mean, he would lose on purpose just to make sure the other person won. And I didn't know what was wrong with me because I really like to win at things. I really do. And I met in my owner at the Chick-fil-A there in Foothills Mall in Maryville, Tennessee. He just had this combination of this insatiable desire to win combined with this humility to serve. And I think that meshes really well if you're an entrepreneur. And I just learned a tremendous amount from this guy. So all the way from 16 to 18, all the way through college, I worked and served customers. And then one day he said, "Hey, have you ever thought about being a Chick-fil-A operator?" And in our franchise model, we can individually own a restaurant with a little bit of money down. And the Cathy family is very gracious because they essentially buy the land, build the building, outfit it with all the equipment, and then they essentially hand over that franchise and we split profits. And that's how our deal works. And so my operator said, "Shane, have you ever thought about being an operator?" I said, "Well, I'd love to do something like that." He said, "Well, let's take you down that path," and that's what I did. And so in our early 20s, we went out to California and took over a mall restaurant in the Silicon Valley area in Sunnyvale, California for about 3 years. We did such a good job there, we shut that store down. They still decided that I was okay, and that's when we came back here to Charlotte in the University Place back in 1995. We opened up University Place Town Center at the time, right by the UNCC, and started a business and started a family. And that's when we got to know Chuck and Karen, and very quickly I realized, okay, put this great personality in a restaurant talking about building a business, and Karen was awesome in helping me establish what it was like to love on a community and to serve a community. And so we built that business. And then about 13 years ago, I made a transition to our corporate headquarters down in Atlanta. And God was just telling me that was the right decision to do. And so I went down there, and probably for the last 6 to 8 years have been heavily involved in the customer experience world. And so everything from just thinking about how does a customer feel when they come into the restaurant, to the processes that we have in place, the onset of digital and how digital mobile apps, I don't know if anybody has the Chick-fil-A mobile app. I need to sign you up before we leave if you don't. But how to take that digital app and create a customer experience with that. And then once you have that app, how does it feel once you walk into the restaurant? What does that feel like? So working on all those systems and processes to do that. And here's what we discovered very, very early on. And it's not a surprise. And honestly, what'll be interesting today to talk about is what you're doing in this church is very similar to what we do in the quick service industry. It's the same. I mean, hospitality and service is not rocket science. It's really not. But there are some systems and there's some simple things that we can do to get really good at it. And I actually think what customers enjoy and appreciate the most is the consistency of an experience over time. And so when you have, I want to be right up front with you because I think this will be helpful as you think about your church. And specifically, we had to do this at Chick-fil-A. You really have to think first and foremost about your customer. You have to say, okay, who is our customer? We essentially have two customers, and I know there's a lot of customers out there, but just for the sake of this example, I'll share two with you. The first one is we call Brenda the Busy Balancer. Brenda the Busy Balancer probably has about 2.5 kids, right? About 3 kids. And she is trying to make things happen. She's trying to get the family set up, and she's going to soccer practice and going to school. She's volunteering at school. She may work part-time. She may not, but she's hustling around. And the last thing that she wants to do is to provide an experience that's not worthy of her family. And what I mean by that is she gets frustrated when she comes home and she doesn't have time to make dinner, or she doesn't have time to make it the right way, to do the right things for her family. And so we look at that customer and go, okay, what is it that Brenda's going to need when she walks in that restaurant? What are we going to need to do? How are we going to need to cater to Brenda? Because Brenda is a huge customer base of ours. The second customer we kind of talk about is, we call him Phil the Functional Eater. Phil the Functional Eater, he's coming in, he's getting 2 12 nuggets because he's going to eat one now and he's going to eat one here in a couple hours. I mean, he's like, it's all about fast, it's all about function. It's like, listen, I got to get to work, I'm in a hurry, and your drive-thru needs to be fast. And so we balance Brenda and Phil. So think about your customer. Think about who's the customer that's coming in here. You may have a couple of them. One that I talk about a lot with churches especially is I always talk about the dad, the skeptical dad. You know who the skeptical dad is? The skeptical dad has got possibly a daughter or son that every Sunday night they've been attracted to this youth group that's showing up over here with 275 of their best friends. And they've been coming for weeks, and they go back home and they go, hey, Mom, Dad, you need to, this church is pretty cool. And he's like, where are you going every Sunday night? He's like, I'm going over to this church. It's great. It's great. Matthew's Methodist. You need to come over here. Like, why don't you just come? And one Sunday, he walks in the door. And how is he feeling? What does he feel like? Figuring that out, I think, is really, really important. So we're going to talk a little bit about what kind of experience do you need to have for the customers that are walking in. And I do think they're customers. I mean, the greatest business plan on the planet is the gospel. Flat out. You know why? It's been in existence. It's never gone bankrupt. It's never had really a down year. For 2,000 years, the business plan works. It works. And I do think we're called to reach people for Christ. That's what we're called to do. We're called to reach people in need. And one of the best ways to do that is through the gift of service and hospitality. So I'm going to take you through an exercise right now. Here's what I'd love you to do. If you've had a great customer experience in the last 30 days, I want you to stand up. If it's something that you just think back, 30, 60 days, you think back, you go, I just had that was a good experience. I remember what it was like. It was a good experience. Just stand up. And don't feel pressure to do it. If you haven't, it's fine too. Okay, do you have a microphone? Just real quick. You got a mic? Okay. If you don't mind, I want you to think about the 1 or 2 things that made it a great customer experience. You got it? You got it in your head? Just, if I give you the mic, just say, what were 1 or 2 things, Diane?
Conversation.
Conversation, okay.
Engaging.
Helping.
Assistance, okay. Now, who wants to give me the specific example? Who could give me a specific example? You got one? Bob, give me a specific example.
I was at Home Depot, helped an elderly customer, and they gave me 2 drill bits I had in my hand, $20 worth.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. All right. Thank you. Okay, so you can have a seat. Thank you so much. So I heard, here's what's interesting. Now, helpful, caring, gave me something. That's good. Okay, now, here's what I want you to do. If you had a poor customer experience, I want you to stand up. In the last 30 to 60 days, stand up if you just had it wasn't good. And honestly, guys, listen, if you say it's Chick-fil-A, I'll take that, okay? It's fine, okay? I'd rather not hear it, but I do want to hear it. I really do want to hear it. So you had a poor customer experience, right? Tell me what was that example?
Do you want me to name the restaurant?
You can or you don't have to. If it's Chick-fil-A, please don't. Okay, I'm kidding. No, go ahead, you can hold the mic.
It was Carrabba's last night.
It was Carrabba's last night. What happened?
Well, we ordered a salad, and I wanted oil and vinegar, and my husband wanted blue cheese. And so they brought out the salad, but there was no dressing. And we waited and we waited. So we're salt and peppering it, and he's playing with the salt and pepper, and we're eating it dry. So finally we had to call her to come over. And she said, "Oh, I'm so very sorry." She said, "We're backed up." So she poured my oil and vinegar, and she laid down the little dish, which we thought was blue cheese, towards my husband. And my husband said, "Is this blue cheese?" And she said, "No, it's gorgonzola." He said, "Well, I asked for blue cheese." "Well, sir, we don't have blue cheese. We only have gorgonzola." He says, "Well, I don't want my salad then."
And she replied,
And she says, "Okay, sir, I will take that off of your bill." Then the manager came over. We didn't ask for the manager. The waitress sent the manager over. And she said, "Don't worry about the salad. You'll get 20% off of your whole bill." So we said, okay. So we continued to stay. Meanwhile, the manager went to the table right in front of us, which was a booth. And there was 4 adults at that table. And she's talking and talking and talking. And they all got up and they left. And what we heard them say was, 5 more minutes, your meal will be here. Well, as they got up and walked out, the man with the tray came with their meal, and there was nobody in the chairs. And
so they had enough.
They had already gone.
Oh.
And then I said to my husband, "That same manager is on her 4th table. What's going on?" So when the waitress came back to our table, I said, Are you short-staffed today?" She goes, I said, "It seems like somebody probably just walked out. A cook walked out." She said, "That's exactly what happened." But she never said, "Ma'am, we're short-staffed. Please be patient with us. We're lacking cooks. Let me fill your water." She didn't fill our water. But had she told us that ahead of time, we could have been more patient and understood.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay. I wish I had a gift card for you right now. Now, here's the other thing I would say. And if you have a British accent and you share it, sounds even worse, doesn't it? It's so prim and proper. It's unbelievable. Okay, give me some. Not necessarily the details, but just maybe how you felt or what happened in that experience.
Just totally unheard. We have a contractor that doesn't respond and has thousands of excuses. And by the way, I'm really glad we didn't go to Carrabba's last night. We almost did.
Oh, gosh. So just a lack of response, just not respond, no follow-up. Great, thank you, Ellen. Appreciate it.
Mine is a repeated experience, particularly in large retail stores. I've found several. I have walked out 3 times because I found something I wanted to buy, and I couldn't find anybody to take my money. So I put it on the counter.
Walked out. How many is that? How many of you had that experience? Okay, here's what I find interesting. What was the common denominator perhaps in both of those? What was the common denominator? Here's what's fascinating. Here's what we found. It's usually a service piece. It's usually, we just don't bother to be transparent about the real experience, or it doesn't feel like you want to take my money, or it's an attitude, or it's something of that nature. It's usually people, I don't know why I'm using the mic right now. I have no idea. I have a headset. Okay, we're going to put this down. Okay. Oh, gosh. Okay. I apologize. You're going to find I'm a lot different than when I'm preaching. Okay, so I apologize. No, I have not at all. This is me in my element, to be honest with you. I love this, so we're going to have some fun today. So, but what we found is typically it is because there's a service experience, an attitude, or it's a feeling that you have. Now, here's what I want you to think back to. What was your first visit to I'm about to say University United Methodist Church. I apologize. Matthews Methodist Church. What was that first experience like for you? Do you remember what that was? Do you remember, did somebody say hello to you? Right? Was the first experience good, or was it the second experience? Were you greeted in the parking lot? Were you greeted up here? Maybe you were checking in kids, maybe not. I would say odds are that it was good enough for you to come back, right? Probably good enough to come back. Now, odds are, statistics would tell you that there's probably been some guests that came in and didn't get that. The system didn't work. The process didn't work. So-and-so that was supposed to be at the welcome desk had to go do something else, walked away, and that person, that guest, walked up for the very first time, and nobody was there. And they would say, if we said, what's your church experience? They would blame it on service. They would say, I was there, I wanted to attend, but nobody would take my order. Nobody would check us in. Now, is that the truth? No. Is that the spirit? Is that the heart of this place? Absolutely not. Is it the heart of Carrabba's not to want to serve a guest? No. Is it the heart of the big box retailer not to want to? No, it's not. They truly do want the business. They just don't have the systems and the process and maybe the importance of it. So one of the things I want to talk about is the difference between what is hospitality and what is service. Service is providing a product. Hospitality is caring for people. Why does hospitality matter? Somebody yell that out. Why does hospitality matter? It makes you want to come back. It welcomes you. Puts you at ease. Oh, that's good. There won't be a need for service if there's not hospitality, right? If you do those two things, more of the time you're going to be successful. So I want to tell you a little bit about where that came from. Really the birthplace of this was Truett Cathy. I mean, it truly was. I mean, this is what, just to give you a little more context, and I'm going to show you a video and I'll give you a little bit more. But really early on, he just loved the restaurant business. We have a lot of fond memories of Truett. Many of us have real personally live examples of how he just cared for people. One of my fondest was I was with Dan Cathy about a day after Truett actually handed over the business to him. He was in his truck and he just said, hey, Dan, it's time. It's time for me to kind of hand it over to you. And his last words that he said to Dan before Dan kind of took over responsibility is take good care of yourself. Take good care. I just find that's powerful, right? It's like take care of yourself. Not don't run this business in the ground. Make sure the business keeps growing. He was like, no, Dan, take care of yourself. So hospitality really was the lifeblood of Truett Cathy. So to stand up here and say, hey, this is something that, a bunch of staff people from Chick-fil-A created, it's really not. It's really the embodiment of a man named Truett Cathy. It's in our blood. Now, here's what I find is fascinating about the church. It's the same thing. If you think about it. Truett basically took biblical principle, this idea of do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, right? It's like this idea of a good name is rather be chosen than great riches. It was all about serving other people. It was all about the second mile service. Go the first mile and then take them the second mile. So as we think about even how he created this business. He started with his brother very early on in life. His brother, they started the business together, and then about 2 years after they started the business, he died in a tragic plane crash, along with his older brother. Shortly after that, his mother passed away, and he just kept kind of pushing along and realized that he was onto something with this thing called a chicken sandwich. His mom loved to make this food in the back of her kitchen, and she would have this breading that he loved, and so he took that and perfected it, and voila, back in 1967, he came out with the Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich, and the rest is history. People have bought millions and billions of these things at this point, and so what he realized really early on, it was the sandwich was good, but it was really when it was in combination with the service. So I want you to think again to the experience that you have here. What people are generally coming for is they're interested in a relationship. They're interested in a community. They're actually curious about this thing called Jesus or God. And so they walk into this facility and they say, okay, I want to know more. That's the product that you have to offer. But it has to be combined with an incredible service experience. It has to be so welcoming that they want to stay, even when it's hard. Even when every part of them says, I am not worthy, it's not worth it, I'm not going to stay. And if they can have that service experience that you can provide, it is powerful. So I want to take you through some of the things that it takes to do that. So Truett has a famous saying, courtesy is cheap, but it pays great dividends. And very quickly, I want to get to some of what this looks like. Talked a little bit about this today. I think fundamentally, it's not really hard for a church, but fundamentally for us, it was important that we set the framework, set the baseline, really the bedrock of the business is built around this corporate purpose to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all He's entrusted to us, to have a positive influence on all those that come in contact with Chick-fil-A. I think as a church, it's really honing in on, okay, what is it that we're called to do in this community? What is it that we're called to do collectively in this community, and never lose sight of that, because it's what will drive you. It's what's been driving us for over 40, 50 years. Now, here's what's interesting. Companies expecting to compete on customer experience. Look at the difference from 2011 to 2016. Why do you think that's what do you think is different about that? Why is it that in 2011, only 36% of companies thought they would compete on customer experience? Technology? More competition, right. Technology, more competition. 2016, 89% of companies said, okay, this is what we're going to have to compete on. So if 89% of companies said that, why do you think it's so hard? It's people. It's so difficult because it's people. And it's critical. The people are critical of this. Now, what's fascinating to me, and we're learning a lot even as Chick-fil-A right now, who do you think is the number one company at customer experience? FedEx? Amazon. When's the last time you talked to anybody from Amazon? Never. Isn't that fascinating? I never talked to anybody at Amazon, yet they have the number one customer experience. We're learning some things. There's actually some systems, some processes that you can use that actually give you the sense that you've been served well, and yet you've not talked to a single person. If you think about your Amazon experience, what is it about Amazon that makes you say they're really good at customer experience? Performance? What else? It's easy. It's quick. Anybody ever had to return something from Amazon? Everybody's like, easy return, I love that place. We've got a lady at work right now. Oh my gosh, this is like a nightmare. I'll take a rabbit trail. Squirrel, here we go. Lady at work, somehow she made Amazon upset. I don't know how you make Amazon upset. I really don't. But they have blacklisted her and her family. She can't order anything from Amazon. They have all the power right now. She is like, and her mom is so upset with her. She goes, I don't care what you did, but I didn't do anything. And she's like blacklisted. They will not let her order from Amazon. I have no idea. She's working on it. We're trying to help her. But can you imagine? I mean, that's the power of Amazon. But it's fascinating. This is what companies are trying to compete on. I actually think it's the same exact thing. I think we live in a generation of people that we just expect more from a customer. We're not willing to put up with it anymore. There's too many other options. There are too many other businesses all up and down the strip. There are too many other churches. We're just not willing to do that. So we don't have to, so we just give up. And I don't know what the statistics are, but I would love to know what the statistics are for probably millennials staying at home watching church online. I don't know what it is. I know it's going up. Now, part of the reason it's going up is because they've either had a bad church experience and it's a way for them to tiptoe back into their faith. But I've also seen a lot of millennials that are really excited about these churches that provide what I would call a great customer experience. They just love on them. They throw them into groups. They get them. They engage them very quickly. And so, and I say that because my kids are the ones they're that demographic. That's what they're looking for right now. That's what they're searching for. Okay. So why do customers leave? We talked a little bit about this. Here's what we're finding out. Competition's 9%, dissatisfaction with the product's 14%, the attitude of an employee, 67%, and then personal preference. Does that surprise anybody? No. Most of my decisions to never go back to a brand again are based on this, 67%. It's a personal interaction. It was just a bad experience. They didn't care. And so literally, I just choose not to go to that brand again. Anybody ever done that before? We just, I'm out. Oh, it's if you're in that business, it's hard to hear. What's fascinating about this is how satisfaction correlates to overall loyalty. Now, this is what we've discovered at Chick-fil-A. Our average customer eats with us about 4.5 times a month. The average McDonald's customer is about one time a month. That's typical. That is why a McDonald's and a Taco Bell and others, and please don't hear, let me tell you something, I'm a huge McDonald's fan. I believe in that brand. I want them to come back because I was raised on Big Macs and fries, okay? And I really do want them to come back. Matter of fact, I've been so excited lately because they actually, this is a plug for McDonald's, I'm just telling you. Their quarter pounder, if you haven't tried it lately, they actually are cooking it fresh, and it's back. I'm like, yes. Now, I don't think they ever need to bring back the McRib, but the quarter pounder is really good. Now, I've been like 8 for 8 on quarter pounders, but like 7 for 8 on service. I mean, it's like not as good. It's not as, their service still isn't there. I said 7 for 8. It's more like 3 for 8. So the service level isn't there, but the product's back. And I want them to do well. I want all businesses to do well. I think we need more businesses like this. But here's what's fascinating to me. When you correlate satisfaction, loyalty spikes. Does that surprise you? So, for example, somebody came in this Sunday and they had this incredible experience. When they came in, somebody just immediately noticed them, said, "Oh, you look like you're new to this church. I'd love to help you find out where you need to go." And they have kids, so you take them over to the children's area, you check them in. On average, how long do you think that person's going to stay here? Maybe until they move. I mean, it is absolutely amazing. If they get that kind of experience, what's fascinating to me, you may have been in that segment where the service was, the experience was so good, it didn't matter how good Chuck was at preaching. And Chuck's he's a great preacher. I'd listen to him any day of the week. But when the service is so good, when you have such good interaction, it actually doesn't matter. That's what the data tells. It's like, you need to have both, but isn't it fascinating when you gel with a group of people, when you connect with an organization, all of a sudden you're like, it's fine. It's fine. That's what big brands are figuring out now. Nike can afford every now and again to have a flaw in their shoe or a product that just doesn't work or whatever it has, it's just not working. It's because of the loyalty factor. People buy into that product because of who they are and the experience that they've had over time. So loyalty is a huge thing. And so if you think about the impact that you want to have a community, it all starts with the experience they're having with the church. It starts there. And then you can mobilize them to do incredible things. So what does hospitality mean to Chick-fil-A? Well, really it's this. At the essence of this, it generally is caring for people. I don't know how to say it any other way. It has to start there. It has to start with this idea of caring for people. And when we say caring for people, every new employee begins with this training. And it's understanding that every single person that walks in that door has a story. And you may not know what their story is, right? There are people in your community, many of you even, that are dealing with these type of things. It's kind of what we talked about today, right? Everybody's got a mess they're trying to work through, they're trying to work on, and it's really, really difficult. I'll never forget when I was an operator here in Charlotte, there was a lady that was sitting back by the playground, and she had a large lemonade, and I went up to her and I asked her, "Ma'am," I said, "can I refresh your beverage?" And she said, "That would be great." And so I went back and I got her a refill and came back. And when I came back, she was crying. And immediately I checked to see if my finger was in the cup or I'd done something wrong. I was like, oh no. And I handed it to her and I just couldn't help but ask her. I said, "Ma'am, is everything okay? Are you okay?" She said, "This is the first time that somebody has done something for me in over a month." She goes, "My husband's overseas. I got 2 kids. I got the large lemonade because, honestly, I knew I wouldn't be able to get up." She goes, "This is the first time anybody's ever done anything for me in a month." She goes, "I'm totally on my own." totally changed my perspective of what service looks like. At the time, I was like, I have a job to do. Here's the process. You go out in the dining room 2 or 3 times an hour and you check to see if people need a refill, and you get them a refill, and then you come back. That's the system. But if you don't do this with this underlying thought of care, you miss these opportunities that everybody has a story, right? Everybody's going through something, especially here. Most of the time, there's been something that's triggered a revisit to a church or stepping back into this place, or maybe just getting up and coming here. There's something that's a trigger for that. And most of the time, it's a story that we got to work hard at uncovering. And most of the time, you don't even need to know what the story is. You just need to serve. You just need to care. So I want to talk to you about some of the principles and practices for doing that. And I'll use an example. It really does this. We call it operational excellence and second mile service. Now, what operational excellence is how do the systems of your church work? So let's use one example. A system would be, how do you check in kids to the nursery? Is it smooth? Does it make sense? If I'm a parent, what does that system look like? And do I feel, when I drop off my child, do I feel like they're going into a safe environment because of the system that's there? What's the system for a first-time guest when they walk in? Now, I heard Paul allude to this. He said, if you're a first-time guest, please stop out by the welcome desk and we'd like to give you a gift. That's a system that you put in place to recognize a first-time guest. But if you think about, the first thing I would challenge you to do is think about what your systems are for each one of your services, for each one of your experiences. And this goes for 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock service. It goes for the youth tonight. There's a system that you need to have to make sure that people feel like they're taken care of. That's what we call this in operational excellence. That's what we call it. We talk about that when we talk about the drive-thru. Have any of you had an experience at the drive-thru where somebody was outside with an iPad taking your order? That's a system. That's a system that we developed because people got tired of the drive-thru being back, lined up around the Chick-fil-A. And so we put a system in place and figured out the methodology for how to take orders on an iPad to speed up the drive-thru. So it's working on those systems that allow you to do that. That's what operational excellence is. In our business, we call that quality food. We call that genuine hospitality, surprisingly fast. It's really these 3 things that make up, you got to have, I said quality food, but it should be craveable food, genuine hospitality, surprisingly fast. If we do those 3 things, and we build that, that's what operational excellence looks like for us. Now, this other thing is second mile. And you can't always do second mile, but occasionally you bump into individuals and they have a specific need that if you just spend a little bit of time on, you can actually go above and beyond their expectations. Now, you can't do that with everybody, but an example of that, you may have seen this recent article, and I wish so much. We actually have a commercial on it right now. It's called The Little Things, but there was a story of a couple in Houston when a hurricane hit. And he called up to Chick-fil-A, and he was just joking around, but he was a regular customer every day at Chick-fil-A, and they were in their 70s. He calls up the Chick-fil-A and says, I need 2 grilled sandwiches and a boat. Because they just had this hurricane and their house was flooded. Have you guys seen this commercial? It's called Little Thing. It's hilarious. And sure enough, the guy on the other end of the phone, he goes, let me see what I can do. And they showed up, the employees showed up with 2 jet skis. Literally rode into their house. The lady got on the back of the jet ski and they took off. That to me is called second mile service right there, right? That's second mile. But it's everything from, I love, these are great stories. I love these stories where somebody forgets their money in the drive-thru. And the team member just says, don't worry about it. You'll come back. Have you done that? Has that happened to you? Happened to you. Happened to you on your lunch. I love that. You're like, wow. You probably never forget that, right? Well, that's where you take a system, operational excellence, and then you marry that with second mile opportunity. That's one of the things we have. Now, here's what's key. Hospitality is embedded in operational excellence. There has to be a system around how you're going to treat people. And by having that system, then you can marry it with second mile opportunities where you can go above and beyond a person's expectations. We do that a lot with people that have flat tires. We'll just pull them over and then go change their tire. And they're like, wow, I had no idea you would do that. Like, well, you're here, let's do it. There's all kinds of those opportunities, and they show themselves as you're working through these systems. Because if you have a system in place to recognize, is there anything we can do for you today? Everything good? Well, actually, man, my car just ran out of gas. Ding, second mile opportunity. We can do something with that. That's a great opportunity. There's a story out there that you may have heard on the Ritz-Carlton. Here was the situation. So you're on vacation with your family. Your 4-year-old leaves their favorite stuffed animal at the hotel. And I love that last meltdown. What am I doing? What does the Ritz-Carlton do? They take this stuffed animal, and they say, we found your stuffed animal, but before we can send him to you, your stuffed animal wanted to stay at the hotel and have a little bit of vacation. Now, here's what's interesting. They immediately shipped the stuffed animal, but they had time to do all these pictures. And they look, it's getting a massage right there. And it's riding the golf cart. You know, it's working. It's doing the computer's back office security guy. It's awesome. What do you think? Can you imagine getting these emails if you're the parents and you're showing these emails to your daughter? She's going crazy. She's loving it. She wants to go back to the Ritz-Carlton as fast as she can. And believe me, the Ritz-Carlton knows she wants to do that too, okay? And so that's what these experiences do. You look for what is the system. So they have a system. Here's the system. If you come upon a problem as an employee at the Ritz-Carlton, you have up to $2,000 to spend to fix it. Now, let me ask you a question. Did this take $2,000? No. But they had the freedom to do that. Part of their system is, if as an employee of the Ritz-Carlton, you encounter a problem with a customer, you have the discretion up to $2,000, and I would tell you it's even more than that. Whatever it takes to solve the customer's problem, you have the authority to do that. And this is the kind of examples that you get when you put systems in place. Let's dive into, I think this will help you guys as you think about your church experience and what's going on here. First with this assessment, and really the assessment is this thinking about the guest journey. When you think about the guest journey of what your customer is doing, and I know I keep referring to it as a customer, but I really think there is a customer out there. And they're coming into the church. What's the journey they go through anytime they're new to this church? What does that look like? So you think about where they're going to stop. And again, let's go back to what that customer is. If it's a single mom, what's she going to do? Right? If it's a skeptical dad, what's he going to do? If it's a family, what are they going to do? If it's a senior citizen, what are they going to do? What does that journey look like for that customer? And think through each one of those steps and map out what that experience needs to look like. It's really important, the assessment piece. Then there's hospitality training. At Chick-fil-A, this is what we call our recipe for service. And these are 4 things that you ought to see in any Chick-fil-A that you go to. Now, is this perfect? No. Is it something we're working on all the time? Yes. But these are 4 qualities that we look for. And if we can teach this to anybody that comes into the door at Chick-fil-A, it's gold. It really does work. Here they are, pretty easy. Create eye contact. That's that's novel, isn't it? Just when somebody comes in, you make eye contact with them. Now, surprisingly, it gets harder to do that because we live in an age where what? We're doing this. Right, we're just looking at this. Gina had to remind me of the eye contact the other night at dinner, didn't you, honey? It was embarrassing. But I have listen, in my defense, I have a very important fantasy football team that I'm working on right now. And I'm trying to beat my boys, so I'm just doing my best. Okay, but anyway, eye contact. So we have a 10-foot rule. If you're within 10 feet of somebody, and you make eye contact, what's the next thing you should do? Smile. Share a smile. Now, if everybody that was on your hospitality team, or for that matter, for anybody that was a member of this church, just did these 2 things, can you imagine what people would be saying as they leave Matthew's Methodist Church? Man, they were so smiley over there. Everybody's just smiling all the time. Imagine, it makes a huge difference. Matter of fact, somebody came up to me, and I wish I could remember who it was, but came up to me I just feel better when I go to Chick-fil-A. I just miss them. I just come and hang out because they're my family. I had a guy with me. His name was Paul. It was really early on. It was back in 1996, and his wife and he stopped by Chick-fil-A every single morning, and she came down with Alzheimer's. And so for about 2 years, she was in a facility right by the Shriners Temple. She was in a facility right there, and he still came by every morning on his way to go see her. And then she passed away, and he kept coming. I was like, Paul, why do you keep coming to Chick-fil-A? He's like, I know you don't live around here anymore. He's like, this is my family. You guys make me feel better. I'm like, man, that is what it's about. That is what this place is about. So making eye contact, sharing a smile, speak enthusiastically. How are you this morning? I mean, that is what enthusiastic looks like. It doesn't have to be over the top. It's just, are you excited about your relationship in Jesus Christ? You want to share that? Eye contact, share a smile. Hey, how are y'all today? This really worked. I'm telling you, this is gold in a youth group. Because you think about those teens that are intimidated, they're shy, they don't know really where their spot is, and they walk into that youth group. Man, if you can get some youth pastors, better yet, if you can get some senior leaders, some kids that are juniors and seniors, and they do these 3 things, it is absolutely tremendous. And you see it happening. You see this connection start to happening. And then we add one more thing, and it's really this idea of staying connected. So you may have experienced this in a drive-thru. Even though the drive-thrus are fast, what we don't want to do is turn our back to the guest too often. We actually encourage that person that's working the window to stay connected with that guest. And it may be little things like, oh, their dog is so cute, right? It's like the dog's in there, or where are you guys headed today, or are you having a good day? And they stay connected. Right? They see the car come up, they make eye contact. They smile, they speak enthusiastically, and they stay connected. That's the 4 things. Don't go out of here. I guess you can go out here. You wrote it all down. You can go out and sell these ideas. I mean, they're not rocket science. It's just implementation. It's just implementation. So I want you to hit the pause button. I want you to think about, what would this look like for a church? What's hard about this is that we all come into the church sometimes with our own baggage. And we just forget that really the church is not here to serve you, right? The church is not here to serve me. I am here to serve God's church. That's what this is all about. And it's hard because we come in with baggage, and we actually do at times need the church to serve us because we're hurting. But you sometimes have to hit the pause and go, whoa, what's my ultimate responsibility here? Oh, gosh, it's to bring others into this community so they can feel the love of Christ in all of this. And if you're telling me that I can do that by making eye contact, by smiling, by speaking enthusiastically and staying connected, listen, I'm not a smart guy, but that's a pretty easy formula right there. I think I can do that. That's what I would encourage you to keep thinking about. How are you doing that collectively as a church body to that community out there? Okay, we do talk about a little bit about this, and it may be hard to read, so I apologize. But instead of saying something like, "Hey, howdy, what's up?" we would say, "Good morning, welcome to Chick-fil-A. How may I serve you?" So there's language around some of these things, and I do think that's important. I won't camp out on this, but an example of this would be. Early on when Truett decided he wanted to say "my pleasure" when somebody said thank you. I mean, honestly, for about 4 years, I just felt like that was the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. And I would very happily say, "You're welcome." You know, if somebody said thank you, I'd say, "You're welcome." I didn't want to say "my pleasure." But what my pleasure has done, anybody worked for Chick-fil-A before? You don't work for, anybody work for Chick-fil-A? Oh, raise your hand proudly. It's okay. We get it up there. All right, we got it. Now, did you find yourself, when you learned to say my pleasure, when you learned to say my pleasure, you learned how to say that, right? You did. Okay. Did you find yourself saying it at home? Isn't that crazy? It's like all of a sudden your brothers and sisters going, it's your pleasure, huh? Okay, great. That's fantastic. Mom and dad are like super happy that you started working at Chick-fil-A. I mean, it's contagious. That's what we realized is, gosh, that system, that process, and to be honest with you, it's one of the reasons I grew up saying yes, ma'am, yes, sir. Because my dad kind of just said, that's what we're going to do. It's a system. That's what we're going to do. That's our response. You're going to say yes, ma'am, yes, sir. And that's kind of how you learn that, right? Same thing goes with what's the system that you have in place to make people feel welcome. And some of this is just the language of hospitality. And I think you guys probably know what some of those things are. When handling requests, the fond farewell, is there a system or a way that you're going to say that when people leave? So why do you do this? Why is this important? Help me answer that. Why is all this important? It does, in a business, it actually was very fascinating about that. It does add to the bottom line. Now, does anybody remember what Truett's life verse was? Remember what he said? It was Proverbs 22:1. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. Here's what I find fascinating about that. So the reason that this is important is because it actually cares. It's about caring for people. That's what it is. Now, what's fascinating to me is I find that most businesses that care more for people actually, in the long run, do better when that's first and foremost. Now, if you flip those two, and all of a sudden I'm worried about the bottom line, this one it dies out. It dies out. So starting with care, starting with a better why, actually can help you actually be a lot more successful. So I think this why is really important. And I loved, Chuck, I'm going to steal something you did today. I thought it was awesome. You did it at the offering. And all three services you did this. Does anybody remember right before the offering what Chuck did in the service? You remember what he talked about? He actually talked to you about the why you tithe and why you give an offering. Remember what it was? 42 small groups meeting right over here. Matter of fact, this week it's 45 small groups. Matter of fact, there's so many small groups, they even have to use my office. Remember that? That's a why. That's what you get to do. I'm going to tell you something. I'm so fired up. I want to go back to our church. I'm like, you got to come up here and see what they're doing in the youth group. You got 275 kids. That's absolutely amazing. When you share that why with people, they want to come with you. They want to come with you, and that's what this is all about. When you're kind to people, when you share that hospitality, they actually are like fascinated on why are you doing that? And if your why is because we care about you and we want to have an impact in your life, people, they can't stop. They can't get enough of that. They cannot get enough of that. So having this why is super important. So how does this apply to y'all? Sorry. How does this apply to y'all? What does that mean? And here's what I want to do. I want to hit the pause. I want to do a little Q&A if you'd like. I want you to talk about, are there things that you've been thinking about here in regards to things that you might want to try or do? Are there questions that you have in relation to Chick-fil-A? I want to be as helpful as I possibly can in this journey that you guys are on to have an impact in your community. And I think we all are learning together. Questions, anything anybody curious about? And you can even ask why we got rid of the calendars. That's fine. I'll go down that path. I apologize. Okay. Yes, sir.
What are your top three? Give me three of your top interview questions when you hire somebody you're working with. Because it's very clear that they're different than other kinds of.
Great question. So his question, or what are the top three interview questions? And let me just say this before I go down that path. So we just talked a lot about the principles, right? We talked a lot about the process, but most importantly, it's the people, I mean, I think you know that, right? And so the question is centered around what are the 3 interview questions that you might ask people. I don't know if I necessarily have the 3 questions. I will give you characteristics that we look for. We generally do look for people that smile. I mean, we just generally look for people that smile. And we actually, a technique that we like to use is we like to have people tell us a story. So I'll give you an example of that. We'll say something like, have you ever had to deal with a difficult customer? And they'll say, yes. I'll say, take me back to that moment. Like, what happened? What was the story? What led up to it? I'm really fascinated. I want to know. How they tell that story says a whole lot about how they're going to handle situations or their point of view on things or their attitude towards things. And so what you find out in those experiences are, did they typically kind of the whole time talk about how it was the fault of the customer? Or do they go, they were really upset, but you know what? We just said, this is something we got to do. This is what we're in the business to do. So I just wanted to fix it. And you look for themes there, characteristics there. So we use story to try and unpack in somebody's interview what it really means to them to show hospitality. So that's probably a theme. So we look for smiles, and we also ask them to share a story with us in a way to help kind of draw out what kind of person they're going to be. What else? Other questions? Yes, ma'am. Bring back the coleslaw. Got it. Gina, write it down. Okay. Just bring it on. Bring it. I'll receive it. I receive it. I would say the best way to answer that, and I'm trying to translate it to what you guys are doing here, the number one thing, flat out, is that you have an owner that cares about their business. I mean, I don't know how to say it any other way. We don't run our stores with managers. I mean, are there managers working for that owner? Yes. But typically in our franchise system, it's one owner, one restaurant, or one owner, 2 restaurants, not much more than that. And that owner genuinely cares about the people in that restaurant, those team members in the restaurant, when that translates to those team members caring about the guests in those restaurants. And when you get that combination, and having been an operator, I can just tell you, I'm just not excited about walking into a business where I'm shoulder to shoulder with somebody that doesn't care. And I'm not going to put up with it. And so it's like, oh, you're not going to work out. Now, or you're not working out. I'm going to give you a chance here. Like, let's work on this together. Let's figure this out. Here are the 4 things you need to do. But if you can't smile, make some eye contact, this may not work. But I do think it's that owner that takes responsibility for that. Now, let's say you have a responsibility here at this church. What's your volunteer base look like? Are you putting up or risking losing somebody or not being inviting to somebody because of somebody on your team that's just struggling with something and you're not willing to address it? You're not willing to say, listen, we can't do that. We can't do that. When people walk in the church, we got to smile. We got to love on them. And if you're putting up with that in any kind of team, any kind of service team, it's just not worth it. Because there's a bigger picture. It goes back to your why. What's your why? Your why is to attract people into a loving body of Christ. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. And if you're not going to do that, I'm going to do everything I can to help you get there, but not at the risk of losing people. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've had friends that said, okay, Shane, I'll give it a shot. They've been not going to church for 5 years. They give it a shot. They walk in, have a bad experience. When's the next time you think they're coming? Maybe 10, maybe never. Are you willing to risk that? So I think it's that ownership of that individual, that team leader. And for us, it's that franchisee, that leader that's in the business. It's just not willing to risk it. They're not willing to risk it. So they're not going to put up with that. Because we got to have it. And then to add to that, they don't just hire the right person. They spend a lot of time getting that person up to speed. So if you're leading a team, are you spending the kind of team you need to as a team leader? developing the kind of talent around you on some of these things. I mean, we spend a lot of time. We share those stories. We share the vision statement. They watch. Everyone has a story. They walk around a store. They talk about that. We talk about how to serve guests. We practice our serve. I mean, we go out and we practice, and you watch people practice that. And you take a 15-year-old that's scared to death, and you give them a little of experience through that experience, and they get some confidence. And here's the cool thing. That 15-year-old ends up staying for 4 or 5 years. They work through high school, and then they come back on college breaks, and they stay with you because you invested in them. A lot of places out there just don't take the time and energy to invest in people. And I think that's what a church has an opportunity to do. Just invest in people. They'll blow you away. You've seen it. You're seeing it now. That's why your church community is being really successful right now. What else? Yes, sir. Oh, gosh. Okay, so your question is, as the visitor, what is something you did really well and what may have been something that you missed? Oh, sorry. It's right here. It's right here. Well, first, let me just say this. I probably had two of the best hosts in the world, okay, in Karen and Chuck Wilson. So not much stuff was missed. Something that I thought was really powerful, and I know Chuck's always done this, but there's just something, we were talking about this, just Gina and I at our church. Our pastor doesn't make it out. I'm going to literally go back and tell him this. He doesn't stand at the end of the aisle after the service and greet people. I mean, he goes on to his room, or I don't know where he goes. And I'm like, that's a miss. His name is Shane, by the way, and I love Shane. He's a great guy. But I'm like, why are you not out front? That's a great, I got that. I was like, that is so good, because if anything, it just gives people a chance to put a face with a name and get to know people. I loved your welcome desk. I think the challenge right now that you have, as I'm thinking of anything, is you got to think about like when people walk in this door, it's as crazy as it sounds, from there to there is a long walk for the people, somebody that's never been here before. They're like, okay, there's the sanctuary, and then now you've got first-time visitors right there. You may want to think about, is there somebody there that's standing there? Honestly, it may have been, I just didn't see it. But I just think about, like, my business is thinking about egress and entranceways and exits out of Chick-fil-A's and what makes the best sense, and that's kind of what we do with hospitality. So I always think about the systems of that. When you think about your parking lot, are people out there kind of saying, oh, listen, we're right in there, get started, looks like your first time. What are the systems that you have? That may be something to think about. And I'll tell you what's kind of cool. You can actually encourage your friends, even pay somebody. As crazy as it sounds, say, I just want you to come to our church. You've never been here? Come here. Here's a check. I just want you to write down everything you notice. And it's pretty cool, actually, to get people to do that. And get some of those group millennials to do it, get some senior citizens to do it, but just ask your community, say, have you ever been to our church? If not, I'd love to engage you. Just tell us what your first time experience is. We're really working on this. But those are good things to be thinking about. Great question. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we do the same thing at our church. And I'll go back to one of my favorite authors, a guy named Simon Sinek. He talks about the power of why. And all of us need a really strong why in order for us to want to work on the what and how. Oftentimes, and I've done this, we get out there and we make a big push on what we need and how we're going to do it. Here's what we need. We need 100 volunteers, and this is what we need them to do. Versus what Simon Sinek would say is really focus on the why. And just keep talking about the power and the opportunity that you have as a church to literally change your community. And you've got to focus on the why. You've got to keep leaning into that why. And here's why this is so important. So I'll give you an example. Let's use that youth group. If I was trying to get volunteers for that youth space, I would use a lot of visual pictures about those kids and what they're doing. and the excitement and the energy they have. I use personal testimonies. I talk about this is for example, here's a first-time guest. Here's how they felt at this church. Here's why this is so important. Vision cast. Then here's what we need. You want to be a part of this? Have you ever thought about being a part of this? Do you know that you just by yourself, one more volunteer can reach 10 more families? Like connecting the what and the how to the why, I think is really, really important. But I will just be completely open. At our church, we're still trying to figure that out. Because we live in a society where we're so busy that we don't feel like we have time to give to volunteer activities sometimes. But the best chance you have is really casting a strong, powerful why. We deal with this at Chick-fil-A all the time because we're asking teenagers to come in and work for a business that's on average a $5 million business, and they could go work at McDonald's that's about $2 million, do about half the work, and get paid the same amount. Why would you sign up for that? Well, why would you sign up for a job where I'm going to do twice the amount of work? Well, it's all about the why. Here's the why. You want to work with some of your best friends? Do you want to get the schedule that you'd like to have and have flexibility in that? Would you like to have be a positive impact on your community? Would you like to work at a place where you get to actually work for the boss? It's all this why. Why? And then we talk about what you're going to need to do and how you're going to do it. So it's maybe just a thought. All right, maybe one or two more questions and we'll call it out. You guys have been awesome. I hope this has been helpful. Has it been good for y'all? Good? Okay. Most every Chick-fil-A I've ever been a part of eats free. Not everything. There's some things like you're going to have to pay a little bit for the milkshake, man. Okay, because you can't just come in here and have milkshakes every day. But no, most of the time, and honestly, most operators are like, you work too hard, just whatever you want. Especially those hungry teenagers, man. They gotta eat. That's a big one. Jay?
The worst thing I had to deal with was this. Kids. At work.
At work?
At the grocery store. You tell them, put it away.
Yeah.
2 minutes later,
It's
up
back
to the
out.
register.
Yeah.
And it is one of the most trying things to try to. They just don't listen.
Yeah, it is we're trying to figure this out too at Chick-fil-A because it's the tie to our community. It's how we communicate with people through our cell phone devices and mobile devices, and that is a real challenge. I think you try and create a culture where you get distracted where you don't need it, which is really hard to do. I wish I had a better answer. Sometimes I think it's a policy, and then if you make the policy, everybody's like ticked off, they don't want to work there. Every operator kind of deals with that differently. We do have a policy up front. We're just no technology. I mean, we're just not going to have it because you can't serve a guest and do that. It's really hard, like we said, to notice somebody at 10 feet if you're on this device. Yeah, I agree.
What is your policy if your employees see people on their phones? Do you tell them to go up and interrupt them, or leave those tables alone, or fill your lemonade?
Oh, you mean if you're sitting at a table and as a guest you're using technology?
Do you say stay away from those tables and probably doing emails, or don't bother them?
Yeah, we use this. I'm trying to think of the phrase that we use. We say something in regards to the temperature of the guest or the climate. We talk about the climate of the guest, meaning that if you have to use good.
5% above whatever you feel an experience for the person. Isn't it a percentage?
Yeah, we look at a guest. Essentially, we try and help team members understand, like, put yourself in their shoes, and if you feel like that guest would be bothered by you interrupting, then don't. I mean, don't let the policy actually create a problem, okay? That's not, and if the employee's walking out going, I've got to refresh 2 to 3 people's, I don't care, man, I'm sorry, I got to do this. Like, my boss said I got to do that. I mean, I felt like that sometimes, right? I got to get the quota. No, we're use good judgment, and we do talk a lot about that. It's like you gotta figure out the mood of the guest, and sometimes there's some. I mean, honestly, how many of you have ever gone to a restaurant? You just do not want to be bothered. Do not bother me. I'm dealing with something. I'm upset. I want my drink. I want my biscuit. Leave me alone. That's it. Right? That happens. Yeah. I mean, we've done that. When we first rolled out refreshing beverages, everybody was like, I've had enough, okay? You don't have to refresh my beverage anymore. I only drank that much. Like, but we had to figure that out. We're figuring that out as well. Yes, sir.
Funny story about that. A friend of mine went to took his 2 teenage children and a guest. Each of them had a guest.
Everybody's going to want to hear your funny story. And then, John.
A friend of mine took
It's on. Yeah.
their 2 children and 2 guests of the children's to a Japanese steakhouse. Everyone at the table was on their iPhones as the server started his routine with his knives, etc. Well, he noticed it and he put.
This is a PG story, right? It's going to end right. Okay, I just want to make sure.
He
All right.
immediately stopped, put the knives down, and crossed his arms and stood there, and said, "Part of the experience coming to this place is not just the food,
I love
but
it.
the showmanship, and I train very hard for this. When everyone is ready to enjoy everything that we're giving for your experience, I will begin the service again."
And then awkward silence. It's like,
The phone went
he
off.
should just do that big giant volcano of fire. Just really, really big. That's great. That's a great example. I mean, that's the kind of environment we live in, and I think we're trying to figure this out together. Gosh, you're going to have it here. I can only imagine if you're Chuck, how often he sits in the audience and he sees people like on their mobile device wondering, what in the world are they doing? Especially when the Panthers are playing, right? It's like, okay. But that's just part of our environment right now. I mean, it is part of our society. We got to figure this out, but that's a great example of that. Okay, any other thing? Yes.
Take it from a slightly different perspective here. I'm going to use an example I actually had in a Chick-fil-A just last week.
Okay.
I walked in as a customer. I walked in and the place was just absolutely slammed. I mean, every register was backed up, 20 people deep. The line was out the door. I just turned around and left. I mean, I just got up and walked out. Like, I'm not going to sit here for an hour for lunch.
Yeah.
Not a single person said anything to me. The guy out in the parking lot that had the little iPad thing didn't acknowledge me, nothing. I mean, it was like, to me, I just felt like, oh, I'm just another customer. And, obviously I'm one of 500 they're going to see at lunch today, so I don't mean anything to anybody. How do you prevent that from happening? Because I see that happening in churches also.
Yep.
You get some of these bigger churches, I mean, Matthew, we're great, we're a great sized church. You've even got some of these mega churches out here where, you're just another person. How do you keep the church or the business in this case from developing that mentality that, maybe that individual, we hate to lose the $10 lunch we could have had right there, but hey, we've got these other 500 that are paying customers, so.
Thank you so much. That is a wonderful example. And here's why it's a wonderful example. It's exactly what we're dealing with. We talk about trying to grow a small company. We still want to create the culture that customers were used to. I mean, here's a statistic. I'm not proud of it, but it is a statistic. About 25% of our most loyal customers are driving away from a Chick-fil-A at least once a month. That was you. Why? Because it's just busy. Perceived busyness. Now, that's a blessing, right? I mean, it's like, wow, what a problem to have. But golly, you can only do that for a limited amount of time before you begin to feel like a number, before you don't feel like that special guest anymore. So we are literally talking about, first off, how do you build more restaurants to actually increase capacity? You've probably seen that in and around Charlotte. You see restaurants popping up because we do have capacity issues. How do we create the systems around what that needs to look like? So an example of that would be we're working on some dine-in options for mobile so that you can mobile order and then just go sit down. You just find a table and put the number in and somebody comes to serve you instead of having to wait in that we call it a mosh pit. It's like it's terrible, but it's that mosh pit where you're like, what in the world? What am I going to do here? And you feel like a number. We don't want you to feel like that. But we're as fast as we possibly can, we're trying to create these systems that can help us do this. I mean, one of the things, this is really early, we don't know if we can do this, but for 2 years down the road, we're talking about how could Chick-fil-A deliver Chick-fil-A to your house? I mean, how would they do that? So you don't even have to show up. Hey, you just said what scares me the most right there. I am serious as a heart attack. Nothing scares me more than Amazon, because I feel like tomorrow they're going to buy Wendy's. Like, it's just going to happen, you know. And it's like, yeah.
When my kids were done, you're just describing Brenda, whoever, that was me. I went to Chick-fil-A through the drive-thru. I get home and my food is in my bag. I'm like, and Jim's out of town, and I called up there and said, okay, y'all left my food out. I said, when I come back, I want credit. So when I get, they go, well, we'll just bring your food to you.
Yeah.
And they brought my food to me from our room to my house. I was like, oh.
And that's a great, I mean, we've got examples like that where, yeah, we messed up, and that's the operator teaching their team members to go the second mile, to do, I mean, you're not expecting that. So when you get something like that, it's pretty awesome. But we've got some opportunities there. I think it's a great question you're asking about the church. I think that's why you got to be thinking about what's the timing of the next service. What's the timing of what do you do? What collectively can you do to make sure the entire church body feels like a family, but they also feel it's small enough in the service times that you have to where it creates that kind of community. So you got to have the big family reunions every now and again, but you also have to create a community where it doesn't feel so overwhelming that I walk in, there's no seat, and so therefore I go home. So you've actually got to keep attuned to what's going on so that you don't outpace, your growth doesn't outpace you. And that's one of the challenges that we're having right now, for sure.
Shane, can we end on the lighter side here? I know you want to end. Julie and I witnessed what second mile service looks like in a church this weekend. We were visiting our daughter in Raleigh, and yesterday morning, her minister from her church came over and helped her husband core aerate and seed their lawn.
I mean, this is, wow. That sounds like a best practice to me. What do you think? I love it. Yeah. You're exactly right. It's a great place to end. So I end on this slide, just take care. Take care of yourselves, most importantly. Are you doing what you need to do spiritually to continue your walk on a daily basis? Because by doing that, that's what aligns you to these service practices. I truly believe that. And then I would ask you as a church body, as a church family, what are you doing to take care of your community out there? Because you are the living embodiment of Jesus Christ. That's what we are. The church is not here to serve us. We've already been saved. Amen? Amen. We've been saved. Our role is to care for people so that they can be saved. That's what you get to do as a church body. And that's why I think these things, these elements that we're talking about, although they sound so simple, man, when done well, it is that simple thing. It's that simple thing that can lead somebody to an everlasting walk with Christ. That's what we get to do together. So it's, when Chuck said, man, you're going to be exhausted at the end of the day, I'll be honest with you, I'm invigorated at the end of the day because we get to do this together. So thanks so much. I can't tell you how appreciative I am that so many people showed up to talk about a chicken salesman, chicken joint, right? And talk about what we get to do together, because it's all of us leading people on this walk together. So thank you for your time today.